You missed some important news from the LGBTQ plus community this week. To ensure you are current, we are recapping that important news. Here's what you may have missed.
Let's begin by queering up the USA view. In queer American history, Abraham Lincoln writes poem, "But Billy has married a boy." In 1829, Abraham Lincoln wrote a poem about gay marriage. Yeah, you heard correctly. A decade ago, the Washington Blade published a piece in which Mark Segal told why he thought the dismissal by most historians that Lincoln might have been gay was unconvincing to him. Segal is the founder and publisher of Philadelphia Gay News, the country's oldest LGBTQ plus newsweekly. He mentioned a poem from 1829 written about a boy marrying a boy. The creator of this poem was a 20-year-old man in rural Indiana, and his name was Abraham Lincoln. This poem is thought to be the first reference to gay marriage in U.S. history. Most historians agree that Lincoln wrote the poem as a joke or a rebuttal to the lack of an invitation to a friend's wedding. But how a backwoodsman conceived a boy marries a boy poem in 1829 remains a big question. The poem was included in the first major biography of Lincoln, written by his law partner, William Herndon. Revisionists omitted it in subsequent editions. It didn't reappear in Herndon's edition until the 1940s. The poem starts like this, quote, "I will tell you a joke about Jewel and Mary. It is neither a joke nor a story. For Reuben and Charles have married two girls, but Billy has married a boy," end quote. I feel like, all right, so I have thoughts on this, and I'm a historian. That's what I do, and like, this isn't gay marriage. This is not.
I agree. I think it's a stretch.
It's a little bit of a stretch. But I do think there's something that is like, and to be fair, something similar to same-sex unions has existed, and like the Catholic Church used to condone them, like actually used to even back in the medieval ages. Like, so this is not, but part of the thing about sexuality and gender is so much of it is constructed, right? So that it's like they change over time. Ideas of marriage have changed over time. Gay people as like didn't see themselves as gay people until very recently. Like that is like, you didn't like revolve your life around, you know, same-sex attractions, right?
Right. Giving it a name, giving it a culture. And although I have to say that as both a poet and a gay man, I am honored to think that in some small way, I may have something in common with one of the country's most beloved presidents.
Oh, now you made me feel bad.
Sounds woke.
I think
Sounds woke.
really incredible that this, you know, dates back to 1829.
Yeah.
Almost 200 years ago.
That you know, it stands out to me the most, and the fact that they were talking about this back then, which goes to show that, you know, this isn't something that's brought on to people or persuaded or something like that.
That's a good point.
I mean, I have some thoughts on the whole, like, Abraham Lincoln could have been gay. Like, I don't really like that line of stuff because you'll never know, and you can't really, like, go back and, like, assign somebody a sexuality based on things.
But meanwhile, allegedly there were gay presidents. I don't know which one it was.
Allegedly.
But, well, there was one president that was routinely referred to as Aunt Fancy.
And the Bachelor. And like the thing about, like, people have been obsessed about Abraham Lincoln's sexuality for decades. And like, if you've even seen that awful movie, what was that awful movie with Bros?
It was awful.
It was, I mean, I'm sorry. This is not opinion, it's just fact.
I'm done with movies like that. I'm sorry. Like,
there was even like a small plot or like a small subplot or something about Abraham Lincoln being gay, and they're like, oh, and you want to put him back in the closet, and I was like, this is somehow made the movie worse. Like, I mean, I don't like it somehow it managed.
So let me take a different tack. If it's true, and I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but I have a problem with the fact that it got erased, because that's oftentimes the first step to erasing us, is erasing, you know, we don't know if he was gay, he might have been bi, he could have just been an ally. Who knows? We're never going to know.
I mean, unless you dig him up and ask him, you know. Then,
I don't know that I would dig up Zombie Lincoln.
And I just, my issue is I don't like when people like he said he was heterosexual. I'm sure Abraham Lincoln made that known. Like the whole like assuming or like saying somebody who might have been, I think, does more harm to our community than
Right.
anything.
Married to a man, lots of children.
He could have
Of course, that
been.
hasn't stopped,
Might have
Other.
been.
doesn't mean anything, yeah.
Well, that's also as historians, when we are trying to show that someone was gay over time, the burden of proof is so high. Like, you're like, how do you know the X, Y, or Z? When that's not true for straight people, right? Like, you don't have to be like, prove that this person's straight. You're just like, it's always just kind of assumed. That's always like the default sexuality. But also, like even if he had same-sex attractions, he wouldn't have understood himself in that same way, which is not, it's important as in history for us to understand that things change over time, right? Like that, including the way we see ourselves, and that communities grew and built out of our desires and our, ability to, be a community.
But I will say it's important to remember that at the same time that he was alive, Walt Whitman was alive.
And certainly was.
And there was no question.
You're right, well
about
said.
Walt
In
Whitman.
200 years, don't go back and be like, was Elijah Manley actually straight? He was actually straight.
So
A
set,
little bit of
set the record
little bit
straight,
of
Elijah.
That's right.
I was not straight. I was a homosexual man my entire life.
You heard it first here.
That's right.
Your first is coming out.
You have the receipts, I think.
That's right.
Keep watching the only television news in the world from our LGBTQ plus community and stay informed on everything that is important for and about our diverse LGBTQ plus community.